We have a habit of treating grief like a project, a logistical problem that can be solved, cleanly managed, and checked off a list. Much of this traces back to the psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her widely cited 5 stages of grief. This diagram shows the timeline we usually expect to follow. Her framework was originally meant to describe the territory of loss, but society turned it into a strict set of instructions. We expect people to march through denial and anger until they cross the finish line of acceptance. That cultural map is wrong. Relying on it leaves us entirely unprepared when actual chaotic loss hits. C.S. Lewis was one of the 20th century's most celebrated Christian writers. He spent decades building logical arguments to explain human suffering and the goodness of God. He was the architect of certainty. Then his wife Joy died of cancer. His entire system failed. His elegant theology and lifelong answers collapsed the moment they collided with the visceral, physical reality of his own loss. He documented this freefall in 4 raw notebooks. They were so honest and so broken that he originally published them under a pseudonym. To understand the psychology of grief, we have to watch one of the world's sharpest minds realize that his answers are useless. Lewis noted that no one ever told him grief felt like fear. He didn't experience it as a quiet sadness, but as an acute physical sensation that made the everyday world warp and feel unreal. That internal chaos was compounded by the people around him. His friends often didn't know what to say, so they either said nothing or abruptly changed the subject. Psychologists call this the mask of strength. It's a societal pressure that forces the grieving to perform normalcy to protect the comfort of others. This demand for strength ensures the griever stays trapped in total silent isolation. Lewis tracked his own experience day by day, finding that his pain operated like an ambush. He would feel like he was moving forward, only for a wave to double back and hit him without warning. Modern research by George Bonanno confirms what Lewis felt intuitively. Grief is profoundly nonlinear. When we look at the data, the rigid 5-stage timeline breaks apart. It becomes a chaotic, scribbled loop that continuously circles back on itself. Emotions like anger and depression are not neat checkpoints you clear. They are unpredictable weather patterns covering the entire territory. Trying to manage this into a straight, compliant line actually causes more damage. Research shows that suppressing grief because it conflicts with how we should feel leads to worse long-term outcomes, effectively locking the trauma inside. For much of the 20th century, clinical wisdom argued that healthy grieving required detachment. You were expected to sever ties to the dead and reinvest that energy into the living. Lewis tried to force this. He stared at photographs of Joy to find closure, only to feel like a door had been slammed in his face. Today, psychologists recognize continuing bonds theory. It shows that maintaining an ongoing inner relationship with the deceased is normal and healthy. Lewis intuitively stopped trying to sever his ties. He refused to end his relationship with Joy and instead sought a new way to stay connected to her. The real work of grief involves figuring out how to stay in a relationship with someone who is no longer physically there. Across those 4 notebooks, Lewis experiences a slow, unresolved shift. He never finds neat closure or returns to his easy faith. He arrives at a different kind of truth. He writes, "The pain now is part of the happiness then. That's the deal." He realized that his suffering was simply an extension of his love, the same deep affection, now existing without a physical target. It is love with nowhere to go. True grief is an enduring expression of love that we must learn to carry. The question underneath Lewis's journal is whether we can survive loss without shrinking and closing off from the world. It is a challenge to bear the risk of loving someone fully, knowing the ultimate cost of that love is eventually feeling this exact pain.